Rutherglen Area Committee of the 7th of February 2024. I have apologies from Councillor Bradley. I see that Councillor Brogan is present. Just checking to see if Councillor Brown is here. Not seeing Councillor Brown, I'll keep an eye on that. I have apologies from Councillor Calicis. Councillor Cowan is present at the meeting, as is Councillor Cowie. Councillor Fulton is present at the meeting. I'm just looking for Councillor Lennon. Not seeing Councillor Lennon, but I'll keep an eye on that. Councillors Loudon, Nugent and Ray are present, and I'm not seeing anything from Councillor Walker. Again, I'll keep an eye on that. And there are officers present at the meeting today. And with that, Chair, I'll hand to you for the business.
Thanks, Pauline. OK, we'll get started. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Councillor Cowie.
Margaret?
Hi Carol, it's just to say, can I put in apologies for Councillor Walker and Councillor Lennon?
Great, thanks Margaret.
Thank you.
OK, we'll move to item 2 on the agenda. So it's the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there any questions or comments on the minutes? OK, as I wasn't at the last meeting, could I ask someone who was in attendance to move the minutes, please?
Thanks, Councillor Ray.
Thanks, Norman. And can I have a seconder for the minutes, please? Andrea?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Carol.
Thanks, Andrea. OK, we'll move to items for noting. So it's item 3 on the agenda, and it's an update on the Common Good account, and Lorraine Hagan will take us through that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 3 then looks at the Common Good update. It's the annual update that we bring to the Area Committee, and it just advises of any activity that's taken place on the Common Good Fund during the last financial year back to 2022-23. And the reason this is coming a wee bit later than it normally would is because the audit process took a bit longer from external audit's perspective, and it meant then that we were missing the last Area Committee meeting, the last round. So just in terms of background there, we'll just give you a bit of information in section 3 about what a Common Good Fund is, and the fact that we have a Common Good Fund in the Rutherglen area. Rutherglen Common Good account holds only cash balances, it doesn't hold any physical assets. The purpose of this report is really, as I said, just to give you an update on the management of the Rutherglen Common Good account, which we'll pick up in sections 4 and 5, and then just in terms of the substantive part of the annual accounts in section 6, and section 7 picks up consultations. So in terms of the administration then, we're detailing that in section 4. It's really just to note that Finance Services administer the Common Good account, and that any information in terms of the Common Good account is referred to Finance and Corporate Resources Committee, and they make decisions on any spend areas throughout the year. And we report at least twice a year to the Finance and Corporate Resources Committee, and then we come to yourselves as area committees as well. In terms of section 5, that details the role of South Lanarkshire Council's elected members, noting again the role of Finance and Corporate Committee members, and the fact that we keep them up to date on what's happening with the accounts. Some have a bit more activity than the Rutherglen one. For example, the Lanark Common Good is fairly active because of the assets that it holds. And just noting there in the last part that we'll provide an update annually. So in terms of section 6 then, your Rutherglen Common Good annual accounts, the substantive part really is we've got a balance of 128,000 which is invested in South Lanarkshire Council's Loans Fund. So that's really your cash available in terms of being able to spend, if you like. As there's no assets to maintain, as I said, there's very little expenditure or activity in terms of the Common Good account itself. During 2022-23, we had a charge for administering the account, and also income from the fact that the monies were invested in South Lanarkshire Council's Loans Fund, so a kind of deposit interest, if you like. The detail of the spend and income is shown in Appendix 1 for your information, and you've got a balance sheet there as well, which just highlights what the bottom line position is, which is 128,000, as I mentioned. In terms of Section 7, following on from the Community Empowerment Act, we have to advertise any new lease arrangements or any change of use in relation to common good assets, and we would do that to the area committees as well. For yourselves, as I said, there's no assets and there's nothing to highlight in terms of any ongoing consultations. So really back to Section 2 in terms of our recommendations, I'm just looking to note the update and the background information on the Rutherglen Common Good account. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lorraine. Okay, we'll open it up to questions. That's fine. Okay, we don't have any questions, Lorraine. Thank you for the report. Can we happy to agree? Thanks, Norman. Okay, we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda. It's an update on PB from Housing and Technical Resources. We're joined by Claire Frew and Tracy O'Donnell, and Claire will take us through the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm here today with my colleague Tracy O'Donnell, the Area Housing Manager for Cambuslang and Rutherglen, to provide the committee with an update on the participatory budgeting activity undertaken by Housing and Technical Resources so far in the area during 2023-24. So I'll begin by providing an overview of the report, which you'll find on pages 11 and 12 in your pack, and I'll then pass over to Tracy, who can provide a little bit more detail on the progress being made locally. So as the report notes, there are 2 main housing and technical resources budgets that we are considering as part of the Council's PB programme. The first of these is the estate improvement budget, which consists of £40,000 split evenly across the 4 housing divisions. Each local housing management team can direct the funding towards projects and improvements that have been prioritised and identified by tenants and other customers. So while the value of the budget is smaller than others in financial sense, is smaller than others across housing and technical resources, it's ideally suited to a participatory budgeting approach, as it allows a quick response to some of the day-to-day challenges that people and communities can experience. So to date, a total of £9,938.81, which is effectively a full spend for the division, has been allocated to 4 projects which have been undertaken in the Cambuslang and Rutherglen area. These are improving open spaces and drying areas in the Overton area following complaints from tenants about overgrown foliage and plants. Secondly, about improving bin provision in Hillhead Avenue following issues being raised during local estate walkabout. Providing 2 skips to support the clean-up of the local area in Burnhill following discussions with the Burnhill Action Group. And finally, improving the safety of a public footpath in Bankhead after feedback from local residents. And so those 4 projects there under the estate improvement budget. So the second budget that Housing and Technical Resources contributes to the Council's programme is the environmental aspect of the Housing Investment Programme. This is a larger budget with a focus on projects that seek to improve either the quality of the Council's domestic housing stock and or the energy efficiency of the domestic housing stock. To date, 3 participatory budgeting projects are being delivered within the Cambuslang and Rutherglen area, and these are at 3 sheltered housing sites at Kirkriggs, Kirkconnell and Dunure sheltered housing sites as part of a programme of environmental improvements. So in terms of participatory budgeting, 45 tenants across the sites have taken part in the exercises to inform the final proposals for these environmental improvements, looking at things from renovating and redesigning the back and front communal areas, improving pathways, the drying greens, fencing, raised beds for plants, and a range of things that would help make that a nicer environment for people. So the tenants have been very much contributing to the design of these plans going forward, and the total cost of these environmental upgrades across the 3 sites is £195,672.52. So quite a significant amount of money there. So that's a brief overview of the report, but I'll now pass over to my colleague Tracy, who can talk more about what this has looked like locally.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, members. Obviously, the estate improvement budget is £10,000 is a budget that we've been allocated for Cambuslang and Rutherglen. And as Claire quite rightly said, most of that money is spent, it's either through the local housing officers being out and about in their local area, noticing things that might be done that don't get done normally through the kind of repairs budget. So the one big thing, the biggest bulk of money was spent in Overton, and that was to do with the open spaces, species. There had been a lot of self-seeding plants that had grown and started to grow at the bottom of the buildings, and it was just making the whole area look kind of untidy. Those things weren't maintained as part of just our normal ground maintenance contract, so therefore I actually had to do a visit with somebody for ground services, and that's where we got the quote, and it really did make a difference. It was obviously just at the end of summer, and moving forward that's making it easier to maintain now, and for us to look after the environment, for the common drying areas and the open spaces for the residents to use in the Overton area. The second one was at Hillhead Avenue. The kind of shape of that block is like an L-shaped block, so quite a lot of where the bin areas, the bin storage areas out in the back garden are years and years old, and they only hold like a couple of two-wheelie bins at the most. So with us having the 3 blocks there, we spoke to the tenants, and some people had been dumping, fly tipping and dumping at just the entrance to the back garden areas. So that's where, after consultation with the tenants, they were quite in agreement. Obviously, pulling their wheelie bins in and out sometimes can be an issue for some tenants. So having the large communal bins was the preferred option. So that has really cut down on the number of dumping and fly tipping at that area as well, because if anybody's going to come with any rubbish, then they put it in the large communal bins. Burnhill Action Group had contacted us, and it was the youths actually in the area that were wanting to tidy up the area. There was dumping people's front gardens, just the kind of street. So we were in support of that, particularly when it was the youths, the kind of teenagers, that they were wanting to take that on board. In Burnhill, we have the high back area where a lot of the youths, there's clubs on at the weekend during the summer holidays, and that's the kind of area where the kind of young children can congregate. So it was them themselves come up with that suggestion. So we were really in support of that to help encourage the young children look after the area. And finally, at Bankhead, it was just at Quarry now. There is quite a wide footpath, and what we're finding was vans and cars were driving down that public footpath to get to people's front doors. On occasion there has been an ambulance or whatever, but then we're seeing people with vans going down to do delivery, and it's a public footpath, so it was really kind of a safety issue, and that had been raised by a local elected member, but also by the tenants and residents. So just by we were demolishing lockups, they were also at Quarry now as well, so we're creating more parking spaces, which I think we're trying to alleviate some of that, and by the installation of the bollard, it was just to help prevent cars moving onto the pathway. So that's really everything. If anybody'd like to ask any questions, thanks.
Great, thanks for the presentation. That was really positive. Okay, we'll open it up to questions. Nope. Okay, no questions. Thanks for the update. As I say, it's really positive, and I appreciate in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge budget, but it really does make such a difference, doesn't it? And I think the consultation, the buy-in from the community, it ticks all the boxes. Great, thanks very much. Oh, sorry, Margaret.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat. It was just to say that I'm pleased to see the bin issue getting tackled at Hillhead. That'll be a great improvement to the area. It was a hot spot for fly tipping, and it was the bins were constantly having to get cleaned up at a big cost. So yeah, great. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Margaret. Okay, I don't see any other hands, so we're happy to agree the reports. Thanks, Norman. Okay, we'll move to item 5 in the agenda, and that's an update on the community payback order, and Ewan Lloyd and Alison Grubb will present the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 second, thanks. Hi everyone, nice to be here. My name's Ewan Lloyd, I'm the Fieldwork Manager for Justice Social Work in South Lancashire. I'm here with my colleague Alison Grubb, who's the Operations Manager for Justice Social Work. I'm going to talk today about the community payback orders, and in particular unpaid work and other activity, and some of the things that are happening in your local community through the unpaid work service. If we could go on to the next slide. I'm going to start just with a bit of background, a sort of overview of community payback orders, or CPOs as we call them. CPOs have been in place since about 2011. Since February 2011, they replaced community service orders and supervised attendance orders and probation orders, so brought all under one form of order, a community payback order. Now, a community payback order can, when imposed by the court, can have up to 10 different requirements on it, but the most common requirement is unpaid work and other activity, and that's what I'm here to focus on today. The objectives of unpaid work and other activity are to reduce the likelihood of reoffending, to provide a credible alternative to custody for the courts, to provide payback for the community, and to enhance interpersonal and vocational skills of the people that have the orders imposed on them. Courts can impose between 200 and 3 hours in total through an order. Sometimes just standalone unpaid work, sometimes they have other requirements with them as well. Important to note that 3 hours is the overall maximum. So we work with people that might have 2 or 3 different orders, but the absolute maximum of unpaid work hours that they can have on that is 300 hours. Of those hours that are imposed, anything between 20 and 300, other activity can account for 30 hours or 30% of an unpaid work requirement, whichever is the least. So an unpaid, the sort of distinction there is that an unpaid work part of the order must involve some form of community benefit, whereas the other activity aspect can involve personal development, and that will become a bit more evident as I go through. If we could go on to the next slide. So the unpaid work service in South Lanarkshire is based within the Auchentibber Resource Centre in Blantyre. It's a standalone purpose-built building for the purpose of developing and delivering unpaid work. We cover the whole of South Lanarkshire, and we respond to requests from individuals, community groups and other council services to provide services to support and improve their areas. We've got an operations manager here, Alison. We have a 2.5 team leader in post. We've got 13.5 social work assistants who are case managers. They manage the orders themselves and the people on those orders. We have 4.5 coordinators who organise the unpaid work placements, the various activities that they carry out. And we have placement supervisors that actually supervise the service users while they're carrying out that work. So it's the largest part of justice social work in terms of staffing and in terms of the number of service users that we deal with on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis. We're also a 7-day-a-week service. We're on all 7 days of the week, and then that includes 4 evenings as well. Okay, if we move on, thanks very much. Generally speaking, the type of work that we carry out can be community-based, so that's what we call unpaid work squads, which are teams of service users who carry out a wide variety of tasks in the community to improve and maintain community assets. That's the type of work that perhaps people most associate with unpaid work. But we also carry out a number of projects based within Auchentibber, within our base itself, such as we have an excellent kitchen facilities there, we have bread and soup making, we have a wellbeing group that we run, we have a large laundry as well, so we launder bedding, clothes and so on for community groups, and there's also a workshop there where we can build things such as park benches and so on, again for use in the community. We do a couple of other types of projects, remote projects, with survival blankets, rag rugs. These are things, again, that we can use to help the community. And we also work in partnership with Barnardo's and Action for Children as well. So we have a number of different approaches we take to unpaid work. Alison, I don't know if you want to say anything about the remote projects and partnership projects, just briefly. I don't know why to turn this off.
Thanks, Ewan. Yes, I suppose for members' knowledge, I suppose unpaid work services is so broad and vast what we do, but all of it is a benefit to your communities. In terms of the remote projects specifically, those we've seen used in like book bug groups for young children, sitting out in the grass, using survival blankets because they're waterproof, giving them out to homelessness projects. The rag rugs, again, are donated kind of old clothing that we use for lots of, again, for homelessness, for pets, and Dogs Trust have taken quite a lot of them. So what that also does for the people on unpaid work is it's a bit of skill development, but ultimately it's using, kind of from an environmental point of view, resources that we're put in the bin because the blankets use crisp packets and they iron them into a blanket. They're pretty fab. If anyone's interested, I can let me know and I can send you some pictures. And we also work with a couple of the, as you mentioned, the partnership organisations, particularly actually for children just now, who are doing lots in Burnhill, as our housing colleagues were referring to. So we've done a huge amount of the refurb up on that site as well. So I suppose just giving you a bit of context about the breadth of some of the work that we have going on, that you maybe some of the members will be aware of.
Thanks, Alison. Just moving on to the next slide now. Mentioned earlier on that it's also we're also looking to support the service users that we're working with. That's an important part of addressing any of the underlying factors, underlying contributions that led to them being involved in the criminal justice system in the first place. So the type of support that we offer can be things like we have life skills, things like SHIELD, which is a road safety and home fire safety course, financial literacy. We also have a lot of health and wellbeing support. We have Keep Well nurses that attend Auckland to meet with our and do assessments of our service users. And we've carried out things like Hep C elimination programmes and Love Your Liver event as well. And also we look to try to improve the access to education for people that we work with through things like access to college courses as well. So quite a wide-ranging variety of supports and projects that we carry out. In terms of, if you could move on to the next one, thanks very much. Just got an overview here of the number of hours that we've delivered in terms in the first 3 quarters of 2022-23. Unfortunately, I can't break it down at this moment any further than that to a more local level, but we've delivered, as you can see, over 15,000 hours of unpaid work and other activities in South Lanarkshire. 8,500 of those or so are out there in the community, improving and maintaining community assets. About 3,750 hours of work with partner agencies. So on average, we're looking at about 1,200 hours per month in terms of unpaid work hours delivered across South Lanarkshire. And there's also an additional 3,000 hours in terms of other activity, which is focused more on the personal development and addressing the underlying needs of the individuals that we're working with, which is a really key part of trying to ensure that they don't come back they don't re-offend and they don't come back into the justice system. As well as that, I'll pass on to, if you go on to the next one, thanks. I'll pass on to Alison to just talk about a couple of the sort of bespoke projects that unpaid work have carried out over the last few years.
Thanks, Ewan. So people might have been aware because there was quite a large kind of campaign that the council supported around the Winter Jackets appeal, where we got nearly 600 jackets donated from members of the public in order to distribute them toward families that maybe mostly for children, actually most of them were children's jackets, so linked in with a lot of the schools, our local social work community hubs, as well as homelessness charities. And we also do, so that's been the second year we've run that appeal, and also looking for school uniforms for children as well in the summer. So that's, again, we've done that the last 2 summers. Again, it's just trying to raise the awareness, I suppose, of the range of work, unpaid work, but also how important and beneficial it is for other members of the community, and recognising that all those items were donated, laundered and then distributed within our own communities in South Lanarkshire. So really kind of trying to contribute to the wider poverty issues that we're very aware of, that not only impact the service users who sadly come through our service from being in conflict with the law, but the wider kind of community members. So I think it's quite important to recognise the good that the service is doing in terms of promoting and addressing some of those poverty issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Alison. And if we can move on to the next slide, what I've finished off with here is a couple of examples of work in the Cambuslang and Rutherglen area. You'll see the first one there was a request was made via a housing officer to assist with the clearing up of a drying area to make it safer for residents. And you can see the sort of before and after picture there of the improvements made to make that more usable for residents. And moving on to the next slide as well, this is an example of some of the work we did at Bankhead Nursery, where the polytunnel, which was, as you can see from the before and after picture, was in a little bit of a mess, and unpaid work were able to go in there, clear it out, prepare it all, and now it can be used by the children there to grow vegetables. So that's just a couple of examples of some of the work that we've done in this local area. Before I finish, happy to take any questions, but we are very keen to sort of link in with any community-based groups and what have you, especially if anyone's involved in terms of things like community asset transfers and anything we can contribute along in that type of work. And also, if there's individuals that are looking for assistance from unpaid work, there is an online form that can be submitted that we then assess next to our criteria, make sure it fits in with the legislative framework which we work within. But there's an online form which I can share with members following this meeting, so that if they do have any particular projects they'd like to run by unpaid work that we may be able to assist with, they can do so.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we'll open it up to questions. Robert?
Yes, thank you very much. Are you hearing me? Yes. Yes, okay, thanks. Sorry to have joined the meeting slightly late. I got in before the beginning of the last thing. I had some technical problems, but I wanted to ask on this one, just if you had any feeling or sense or statistics about the success of the community payback orders, because I recall when they were introduced, the actual success rates were less than what you might imagine, and an awful lot of it is to do, of course, with literacy issues, drinking alcohol, drinking drugs issues, and things of that kind of background as well, educational issues and the like. Do you have any feel about how successful these things are in terms of the number of people who go on them who then reoffend, or more precisely, don't reoffend?
I don't have those statistics to hand. Oh, sorry. I don't have those statistics to hand, although what I do know is that, certainly in terms of the main purpose of community payback orders, or one of the main purposes, as I mentioned at the start, is a viable alternative to custody. And in terms of reducing the likelihood of further reoffending, they're far more effective in those terms than somebody serving a custodial sentence, because that breaks up that individual's links with their family, with their community. Also, it's very difficult to address underlying needs such as drugs and alcohol, mental health, and so on in a custodial setting, especially with the pressures that we see on our prisons just now. So they're significantly more effective than that. There are, in terms of sort of further reoffending, I think we need to bear in mind that when we're talking about what we call the desistance process, is that what we often see is people might carry on offending if they are given a community payback order. Obviously, our goal is to try to stop that offending altogether, but often that's a journey where what can happen is that the severity or the frequency or both of that type of offending can decrease, and we can carry on working with people even if they have carried on committing further offences. And again, that's the most effective way of dealing with people that don't pose such an unmanageable risk to the public. And obviously, there's only one. Prison is sometimes the only option. But in most cases, we're able to work with people in the community and gradually address the risks and the needs that lead to their offending behaviour and reintegrate them back into the community. There are statistics, national statistics from the government. I'm quite happy to try and look out for you if that would be of interest to the member and to forward that on. Don't know if you have anything to add to that, Alison.
I suppose what I would add, sorry, Chair. I suppose what I would add to that, is that the anecdotal information. Obviously, I'm in the service on a day-to-day basis, and Councillor Brown, I think you've been down to the service as well.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And I suppose it's the recognition of people's journeys when they're involved and they're on a community payback order, and actually how much that connection with their community really makes a difference to that reduction in offending. Because what we do see is that the people who are in our communities, who are in conflict with the law, they still live there, they're still members of that community. So, and I suppose that's part of why we want to come along today, is kind of almost promote that link between their own community and making reparation in their own community. And that nationally, we do know, reduces the risk of further conflict with the law. So I suppose from our point of view, we anecdotally see it and we hear it from the people who are on unpaid work. Nationally, that there is evidence. Like I say, the exact statistics we can share or send on, no problem. But I suppose from our point of view, it's really important to recognise that journey that people are on, we can provide not only the kind of punishment that the community want to see in terms of when there's harm caused in their communities, but actually the help that someone needs to make sure they're not in that position again. And that's what the breadth, I suppose, what we deliver at unpaid work is hoping to achieve. So. Thank you.
Do I have asked another question on that, which is not so much on that end of it, but in terms of the pressures on the community work that you do, which is, I think, much appreciated by communities, has been touched on. Do you find that there's been any change in that after COVID? Are you under a lot of pressure for 10 times as many demands, if you like, as what you can do, or how does it sort of work through?
I'm happy to take that, Ewan, as well. Yeah, I suppose COVID's changed quite a lot, Councillor Brown, for us in terms of, the challenges that individuals face, who are maybe on unpaid work, in terms of mental health challenges, I suppose challenges that we know exist across the country or across the world from COVID. So there's some of that has caused us some problems in terms of motivating people to come out and deliver their unpaid work, which is obviously what we want. We want them to complete their hours and deliver well for our communities. I suppose there has been an increase in terms of, there was the delay during COVID of the backlogs in the court, so there has been an increase in the amount of orders that have been made, and it's taken us slightly longer to get through those because of the amount of people we have. It's roughly about 500 people at any one time running through our service. So that's also a lot of people to manage and offer placements to. So I suppose the backlog that exists during COVID is there, and we're working through that. And in terms of the requests from the community, what we've seen is obviously a change in what the council is able to deliver, and we're going to see a bit more of that, I think, with the budget restrictions that are around for us all. So I think I'm anticipating there's going to be an increase in those referrals, and that's why I suppose we're really keen to look at what other bigger sites and projects in our communities need our assistance, and to kind of prioritise those. Maybe over and above the kind of the one individual who maybe has a request. I suppose it's for us trying to recognise what are the most important things for our communities to get the biggest benefit from the resource that we have.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, Andrea.
Thanks, thanks, Carol. You sort of you touched a wee bit, Alison, on what I was going to say. I was just wondering about the demand for the service, whether it comes from groups or individuals, and if you're, if it's oversubscribed, do you get more requests than you can deal with, or is it the opposite? Really, just a wee bit about the actual, the actual use of the service. Thanks.
Yeah, happy to take that. Thanks. Yeah, so the increase in referrals has gone up. There's no doubt, about 4 times probably in the space of since we've returned to kind of full service, if you like, post COVID. What we have to do is try to prioritise what we can deliver, because we don't have any bigger budget as a result of the request of the service. You still have the same amount of staff and the same amount of vans, the same amount of lawnmowers, all these kind of environmental things that impact our ability to change how we deliver things. What we are trying to do, as I say, is kind of increase the kind of larger projects that we can deliver that mean most to our communities, but also, I suppose, an awareness of communities know that this is going on, and then people's patience around some of that, because ultimately, if people notice something in their community, one of our criteria is obviously that we're not taking away a paid job from some from another part of the council or another service. So as long as that criteria is met, people obviously, when they notice something in their community they would like addressed, they want it done yesterday, quite often. So some of that is about that negotiation about when we can get round to things that maybe are impacted around weather. In particular, those have been the challenges of the winter months. We've seen a big increase in schools and nurseries requesting really lovely kind of like mud kitchens, these kind of things. And they're the best thank you letters to get, if I'm honest, because the kids all draw us pictures, and and that's great as well for the service users to see. Again, we know why they're at the service, but to get that really lovely feedback, sometimes from their own children's schools, and know that mummy or daddy's helped build that. Really pretty powerful, and I think a big contributor to the assistance journey for that person. I suppose, the reality is, obviously we'd all, in every council service, would like more money and more staff to do things. What we do see from ourselves is a really motivated staff group and a really creative staff group. We look at lots of different ways and utilise different community resources in terms of the things that Ewan was mentioning about other activity, in terms of education, health, well-being, and really kind of maximising how we use the resources that we have already in South Lanarkshire to kind of give them that access across a population of people in our communities who probably aren't that engaged in that kind of civic world. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it certainly sounds as though there's demand for your service. So yeah, absolutely. I'm also interested in people from local areas working within their own areas. I'm just wondering about the sort of embarrassment assessment factor, if you like, if they're there doing community payback work and they're doing it in their own child's school, I just wonder if that's handled, I imagine it will be handled sensitively, but I just wonder how I'm sure some people wouldn't want to be placed in their own area, if they're from Rutherglen, they'd maybe want to do that work in Hamilton or something. And I just wondered if you take that into account as well, just for the dignity of the offender, if you like.
Yeah, and that's really a good way of putting it around about the dignity, and that's really important to us. So for every person who comes on to placement, whatever that placement might look for them, because if they have health issues, anything that might prohibit them taking part, we assess that. If they pose risks to people in certain circumstances, we assess that, and absolutely there might be issues around where they are located. Because of how we structure our service, on any given day we could be doing no jobs in Rutherglen Cambuslang or every job in Rutherglen and Cambuslang, so it very much depends, but I can assure you that people's safety and their dignity is absolutely our top priority, to make sure that we can maximise how the benefit that person gets from doing their restorative work.
Yeah, great. That's lovely. Thanks very much. Yeah.
Okay, thanks both for the presentation. That was really helpful. It was a great update. There's a lot of good work taking place, and it's good to see the difference it makes to the community. Okay, we're happy to note the reports. Thanks, Norman. Okay, we'll move to items for decision, which is the community grant applications. There are 6 community grants. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, are we happy to agree the recommendation of the 6 grants? Thanks, Norman. And the second part of the report is just to ask for authorisation that should any further grants come in before the end of March, that they're approved in consultation with the Chief Exec or the Director of Finance. Are we happy to agree that? Thanks, Norman. Okay, we have no items of urgent business, so thanks for your time today, and I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye.